Hello, 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 everybody. Tonight we have a special guest. This is Yolanda Kelly, and I'm with Hearts and Heels. Shay is off tonight, and I have a special guest. This is Brittany Harris, and she's a dietitian. So I'm so glad that you have joined us tonight. This whole month, last month, we were talking about faith during the fight. And so, but this whole month, the month of June, we will be talking about staying fit and how to living a healthier life. So I just want you all to join in and listen to Brittany. She's an expert in this. And so, Brittany, thank you for coming on and being with us tonight. Um, would you let them know? First of all, thank you for coming again. Would you let them know about a dietitian's coach? I was like searching and trying to get some help, and I needed to know about a dietitian. I need to live right, eat better, which I don't do always. But what's the difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist?
So the main difference between a dietitian and a nutritionist is that a dietitian is licensed. It requires a college degree. It requires a dietetic internship. So you complete supervised practice, and then you take an exam to become a registered dietitian, and then you register with your state.
Now, you say registered dietitian. Now,
Mhm.
you sent me some information when I was seeking you out. You sent me some acronyms of some stuff, and I said, "What is that?" So, can you help me out tonight? Can you help me? No, it was RS something. I'm sorry, but I don't know.
That's fine. Most people don't. So when you're talking about a dietitian, you want to look for the letters RD. That stands for registered dietitian. Or you might see it as RDN, registered dietitian nutritionist, because it's kind of confusing, but registered dietitian can be called a nutritionist. Most of us don't like to be because random people can also call themselves nutritionists.
You put in the work to make sure that.
Yeah, so that everybody knows, hey, that's us too.
Okay.
But we also are the experts. We don't just say what our grandmama told us. We go by evidence-based things to tell you what's appropriate for your body in different situations.
Now, there's always a story why we decided to select a certain major. There's a story. And so I know I didn't talk to you about this, but I think it's good to know. Let's talk about the story because it was something that triggered you to say, hey, I want to go into this field. I feel the energy, just by the way. And so, can you tell me why did you decide or how did you decide to become a dietitian?
So, ironically, I did not start off in nutrition. I started off in optometry. And around my junior year or so, I got a little scared and realized I'm not sure that I'm going to get in. What is my backup plan? So I looked in the curriculum to see what would match closely to pre med, and nutrition science matched. And it just so happened I'd been working in a research lab doing some nutritional biochemistry, which is far more scientific than what I do on a day to day, but I enjoyed it. And I always enjoyed cooking. I always enjoyed food. And way, way back when I wanted to be a chef. And my mom was like, yeah, but the money's not steady there. Let's do something a little more real. So of course I went to college and I changed to nutrition science. And at the time I didn't even know what a dietitian was.
Hmm.
So I when it came time for me to shadow, I was interested because I was like, I don't know what y'all do. I don't even know what this looks like. And I went to the hospitals. I saw, and the more and more I did, I said, wow, this is combining a lot of things that I really enjoy. And it taught me a lot in the process that I didn't know about food, that I didn't know about food behaviors.
Mm. So that's something we really need to dive into. You mentioned once you got into it, you began to see and notice. And then the key word that I just heard was you didn't know about food behaviors. Let's talk about that because we're in the South, and we love to eat in the South. I know I do, and I like more home cooked meals more so than fast food. I am a foodie at heart. I just eliminate all sweets and go straight to like the juicy stuff that keeps me going. And so I've always been a meat eater all my life. And so now I'm at this point that I need to really make better health choices because of family dynamics. Let's talk about food behaviors that you mentioned. What type of food behaviors that we tend to see, tend to notice? And like I mentioned, now we are in the South,
Mhm.
and we pretty much most of us was raised with grandmama and mama cooking in the kitchen, and they would cook that fat meat with those greens and fry some corn and cornbread. And so let's
With the
talk
butter
about
pulled on top.
yes, let's talk about
Yes.
that. Let's talk about how what are some food behaviors that as a Black race that we have really considered more so than our sisters and brothers in Caucasian and other races that we need to really talk about, because I know most of our people have diabetes, kidney failure, heart disease, high cholesterol. And so let's talk about these behaviors, and then we'll just kind of segue on to the things that we shouldn't eat that we do eat a lot.
Yeah. So it's important to note that in talking about food behaviors and what you eat and medical conditions, that some things have a genetic component. So that means you are predisposed, no matter what you do, for this to likely happen. And there are some things that have a behavioral component. So if 3 times a week you eating that good cornbread that you put like that half a stick of butter or that whole stick of butter in, and that's just to like put it in the skillet and put it in the oven so that it's hot before you pour the batter in and it pools on top. You know what I'm talking about? Y'all know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That that in addition to the other things, that butter, saturated fat, all of those things lend themselves to a high fat diet. And a high fat diet lends itself to cardiovascular conditions like high cholesterol, like high blood pressure. And then those kind of continue down a path that can lead us to kidney disease and other things like that.
So are you really saying that we need to stay away from juicy seafood?
You know what?
I don't know if I should have said that on air, but I just did.
Now, I am not that type. I am a firm believer that everything in moderation. I would never tell my patients and I would never tell myself to not have those things. Food and how we eat and what we eat and the people we eat with is about love. You know, for most people, it's
Yes.
about love. It's about relationship. It's how we convey love. When my
Yes.
sister had her baby, I went down there and I cooked food for her. That's what we do.
That's exactly.
Yeah. So you can still have those things. It don't mean that, every week I may need to have my mama's homemade macaroni and cheese. It may mean that that's my special occasion food. I mean, during the holidays, I don't say anything to my patients about it other than, hey, here's the guidelines you need to stay in, go and enjoy, because this should be a time to enjoy.
What are some other things that we need to watch out? You said about saturated fat, about pouring butter, so much butter on our food, like in that macaroni and cheese, and then our seafood, because we don't just get seafood. We also have to dip it in butter. And not only that, I love garlic. So I just get me some fresh garlic and mince it myself and dip it, and it's so tasty. I don't know if it smells that good.
So let's talk about that part.
Okay.
Because what you said was really good, because you can still have flavor, you can still enjoy things and do it in a low fat way. Because the problem there is that you have high fat things like butter, which is a saturated fat. Saturated fats, higher intake of them lends to more calories, but also, and so there are two types of cholesterol. There's good cholesterol and bad cholesterol. The saturated fats will increase the bad cholesterol. It can also, and because it's higher in calories, it can increase your weight. And as your weight increases, that increases the likelihood of high blood pressure and high cholesterol and all of those kind of conditions that we don't want to have, right? And diabetes. So, what you can do in the reverse is take some of those things that you love, like the seafood, and adding garlic. That's just like, that's a seasoning. That's not saturated fat.
Okay.
You could do less butter, substitute some of the butter in what you're doing for what we call a mono unsaturated fat, which is one of the types that's very common that people use is olive oil. You could swap that out for olive oil in some instances. or what we normally tell people, the practical way of thinking of it, if it's solid, like if it's liquid at room temperature, that's a better oil to use. If you take butter and put it on the countertop, it's still gonna be solid. Even in the Alabama heat right now, my house is set at 77. It may be soft, but it's still solid. So that's a sign that let's pick something that's liquid at room temperature. And also be let's use moderation with the amount that we need. That means that's taking out deep frying, because when we're deep frying, we're also producing some trans fats, which are not healthy as well. They're just as bad as the saturated fats. But by doing things like baking, broiling, grilling, at summertime is a great time to grill. You're lowering the fat.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good to consider. So I remember, like, so I've been like really working out at one time, and I did it for like a year. And so one of the things that I realized I was eating a lot of hot wings.
Mm-hmm.
However, my trainer was like, you can't eat that because it's sodium. Let's talk about selecting healthy food choices if we have to go to a restaurant, because it's really hard to find healthy places to eat when you're on the run like I am. I'm on the go a lot. So let's talk about selecting healthy food choices. I realized that the hot wings were not healthy because all of the sauce that they put on it is sodium, and then it causes other things, right? So help me decide what are some healthy food choices that I can select.
So the hot wings are not inherently a bad thing.
Okay.
If I'm a fan of fixing the things that we like, so let's fix it. What we would do to fix it is if we would bake them instead of fry them, because that would make it lower in fat. We could still do the seasoning, but do low sodium or sodium free seasoning, because that's also an option. You can use sodium free seasonings like onion powder, not onion salt, because that has salt, garlic powder. You wouldn't use the lemon pepper seasoning because they already add salt to that mix, but you could use lemon zest. You could use lemon juice in it. And if you like spicy, you can still use the hot sauce. You can put, if you want to, you could either use some olive oil, or you could do a blend of a little olive oil and butter to make that sauce come together a little bit, and still do some fresh cracked black pepper. You can still do the sauce, you can do the spice, but all of a sudden we've made it lower in sodium. We've cut the fat by baking it, and you can get some really crispy wings by baking instead of frying. We're leaving the skin on because typically, if you really want to be good, you could remove the skin. You could use a leaner cut of meat.
Not removing skin off my meat. I'm just saying.
But if we're having wings, let's have wings.
Yeah, let's have wings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't just hurt my feelings and have it a skinless wing, and I'll just run away. What is that?
Yeah, that ain't wing.
But I mean, so let's talk about. Listen, I want to pause for a minute to let you know that we're here. I'm Yolanda Kelly, and I'm here for Hearts and Heels, and I have Brittany Harris in the studio with me tonight. She is a dietitian, and she is dropping some knowledge right now because I've been living really bad about eating, and it's because the culture thing. I grew up on all that good stuff, the fat meats and my collard greens and fat and everything, and my turkey and dressing. And I like the best of the best. If I'm going to eat, I'm going to do it right. So for those of you who are listening in, I want you all to tune in and see how we can live better and healthier lives. And listen, this is the month of June, and we got to get it right. And so the only way we can do this is to provide knowledge. And Brittany Harris is here to do that. So thank you for joining in. Brittany, I just want to talk to you about um, all of these new ways of eating and trying to eat better. Now, I don't know. I've heard people are saying they're vegan now, pes, pes,
Pescatarian.
pescatarian, and something like that. And they are keto, Atkins diet, South Beach diet. Let me ask you something because I really, really need to know this. I tried it and then I stopped. What about the vinegar and the lemon juice and the honey? Let's talk about, can you just kind of give me a recipe? Because I've been going in the wrong direction and I'm trying to lose, 10 pounds. I need some help.
So the answer that I can give is the answer most people don't want. There's really no shortcut to it. There's not a recipe that answers all of the questions, unfortunately. The thing with the keto is they're cutting out carbohydrates, they're focusing on protein and fats. But carbohydrates aren't an enemy. There are specific parts of your body that run best on carbohydrates. The key is portion control. The key is pulling back, knowing when you're done. When you go to make your plate, not just making it full, looking at serving sizes, like how much the serving size of mashed potatoes to start is typically a third of a cup. What does a third of a cup of mashed potatoes look like? That doesn't mean, y'all, I'm not saying that that's all you can have. It's saying be mindful eating. What does my plate look like? What is it doing for me? When I think about eating, especially now, I think about it a lot. I have a toddler, he's almost 2. And when I go to make my plate and make his plate, because toddlers can be picky eaters, and I am not having a picky eater. So I'm doing all the things to encourage the eating. I think, okay, so this is our protein, this is our vegetable, we can have a fruit here. What are the components of my meal? What are they doing for me? And then comparing his portion size and my portion size. It's, he still gets a sweet item on there sometimes. It that don't mean he need to have the whole cookie. He may get a fourth of the cookie, but it's still on the plate.
That's right. Perfect. I like that idea of just bringing down the portion size. Now, I'm just going to tell you a little secret, and I hope my girl's not listening to me right now. But we had a nice salad on Thursday, and we filled that plate up. And all I can think about, this is nice, but too much salad dressing and all of that, we need to watch for as well. Let's talk about that. Um, Selecting, we talked about, selecting better food choices. Let's talk about, you mentioned about the keto diet is taking out the carbs. Let's talk about what are some good things that we need to have for whole healthy living, and let's speak specifically to those who have diabetes. What would be what would you do if a person come to you and they say, I have diabetes and I'm trying to eat healthy? What would that diet plan look like for them?
Um, First, I would normally ask them what kind of things are they eating now, because I think it's really important that you start where you are, and we have to make something that is similar to what you're doing. The next thing is for diabetics in general, we want to do a consistent carbohydrate. So that means that doesn't mean we're cutting out carbohydrates altogether.
Right.
It means we're eating consistent amounts throughout the day. Because depending on what type of medication they're on, they may be on a medication on insulin, which is going to decrease your blood sugar, or they may be on a type of medicine that makes their body more sensitive to their insulin. Either way, it's going to cause your blood sugar to drop. So if you cut carbohydrates all the way, now you're experiencing low blood sugars. And that's not what we want. What we want is to bring down those highs to normal. So the first part of a diabetic diet is understanding what are carbohydrates, because a lot of people don't know. Carbohydrates include things, of course, like breads, pastas, rice, but they also include dairies, not cheese, but milk, yogurt, ice cream, um, beans, so black beans, those starchy vegetables that kind of, I say if you squish, cloudy stuff comes out, like sweet peas, corn. Beans are the same way, you kind of squish, cloudy stuff comes out. All of those are carbohydrates. Not inherently bad, but that means you need to be aware that, hey, this is my source of sugar, right? And then from there, it varies in levels, right? So we can't put syrup on the same level as we could a sweet potato, because syrup I can put in my mouth and start digesting it, and it's going to run my blood sugar up a lot quicker than a sweet potato that, especially if I eat the skin, it's got fiber, my body has to break it down, it has to work to get to that sugar, which changes the way that it affects my blood sugar. So there's it's not cut and dry. That's the most important thing. People want the easy answer, but there's not necessarily an easy answer. It's being aware, understanding what carbohydrates are, understanding the way different carbohydrates affect your blood sugar, and then building your plate accordingly. So if I'm diabetic, I know I need to have some carbohydrates on my plate. I know I want them to be complex carbohydrates. For example, that would be like the sweet potato, and not a simple carbohydrate like syrup or jams or jellies, something that's inherently sweet. So then let's say going with the sweet potato, I've got a small sweet potato about this size, in case you guys can see, on my plate, and that's my carbohydrate. I'm going to add some meat in there. So let's say I do, for simplicity's sake, chicken breast, right? Chicken breast is a protein. That's not going to affect my blood sugar. but protein is still important. So I'm having it on my plate. I can add in some non-starchy vegetables, which have carbohydrates, but they're non-starchy. So they're not really going to affect my blood sugar, but it's going to provide me some good fiber and some good nutrients. So it's great to have on there. So that may be in the form of a salad. It's summer. It's a great time to have a good salad with some spinach, some tomatoes, some cucumbers, some bell peppers. All of those are non-starchy vegetables. They're not going to affect my blood sugar. And I'm going to add, let's say, a vinaigrette on there, a balsamic vinaigrette. I bought a sugar-free one from the store, so I don't have to worry about the sugar in it. So I'm going to say that's not going to affect my blood sugar either. So I'm going to put that on my salad. So now I've got a sweet potato, I've got a salad, and I've got chicken breast. So what's next? What am I going to drink, right? I'm going to do a sugar-free beverage because a concentrated sweet, a simple sweet like a beverage is going to run my blood sugar up really quickly. So I may do some sugar-free lemonade, right? So with that sweet potato, that's only one serving of carbohydrates. Typically, we say 2 to 3 per meal. So I've still got some room there. I got 2 to 3 servings. So from there, let me add in a fruit cup. It's a good time. I just bought some blackberries from the store. Serving the blackberries sounds real good. And you know, in the spirit of my mom, who always liked to have bread with her meals, let's add a dinner roll. So a small dinner roll. She always wants a dinner roll. I'm fine without it, but she wants it. So now for our carbohydrates, we have a sweet potato with 1 serving of carbohydrate. We have a dinner roll, and we have some blackberries. That's our 3 servings of carbohydrates. Yep. And that's in addition to our non-starchy vegetables and our chicken breasts. The key there is portion control. That roll is not this big. That roll is probably
like a fist size, a closed female fist size.
half of a female fist size. And that sweet potato is probably about a fist size.
I can do without the bread, but I don't know if I can do without the meat.
You can have the meat. That meat was not affecting your blood sugar. So the problem there that would complicate it is, let's say we swap that chicken breast out for fried chicken breast.
Let's talk about the fried chicken breast.
So the fried,
it's going to taste a whole lot better than that. But we're trying to, you know, I'm working on it. We're working on better eating choices. So okay, let's talk about the fried. What was that? What would that fried chicken breast look like?
So that fried chicken breast is coated in a flour breading. So that's some carbohydrates now we have to account for in our meal, right?
Okay.
So there's that part. And then the other part is that's not going to affect my blood sugar, but that I should be mindful about is that it's fried, so it's higher in fat. So now I may be increasing my fat intake. And if I've got some high cholesterol, that's not necessarily something that I want to do. And I'm also increasing my calorie intake because fried food is a lot higher in calories. Right. So that may be lending itself to more toward weight gain than weight loss or weight maintenance.
Hey, listen, I am enjoying listening to you. This is Brittany Harris, and I'm Yolanda Kelly, and she is the dietitian, and she is giving us healthy food choices and like just thinking healthier and selecting and making better health choices. Not to say you cannot have it, but portion control is the key. And she's talking tonight about portion control, making healthy choices, especially for those who are maybe diabetics. Having some high blood pressure issues and kidney disease, because I think all of this is a path that leads to a path of unhealthy living, kidney failure, kidney disease, liver functioning, all of this. And also, I notice if you're not eating right, for me, I end up having blemishes. Can you tell us a little bit about what we eat can cause us to be tired? Probably we probably have lethargic thinking patterns. Because I notice, like, when I'm eating a big meal for lunch, when I get back, I don't want to do anything. And I'm not going to tell you I go to Chili's and eat that Southwestern egg roll. And so it has corn in it and all that good stuff. And it's a tortilla kind of flour thing. So what is causing that? Is it because I'm eating heavier foods? What is causing me to be so tired after I eat lunch?
Now that I can't necessarily speak to, but what I can speak to is that kind of pattern of what happens in eating and how it can affect you and how you feel. example, I can give my personal story. I'll give a
Okay.
personal story. So I have high blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
I got diagnosed with high blood pressure when I was probably 23. Very unusual. Mainly because at that point, I was going to workout classes 30 to 45 minutes 3 times a week. I'm a dietitian, so I already didn't add much salt to my food. I was, I was a little bit overweight, but, as things go, I was pretty low risk.
Mm-hmm.
That's where genetics play a role. I have a very strong family history of high blood pressure. And at least 2 family members that I can think of were diagnosed in their 20s, which is very unlikely. It was very random that I got diagnosed because most 20-year-olds don't even go to the doctor, have to go often enough to get diagnosed.
Right.
So I was lucky in that way because since I was diagnosed, I was able to get on the medication. And at the time, I was having these headaches, which were so weird. I know I'm a medical professional. I know the symptoms of high blood pressure. I know that I have asthma. So the shortness of breath that I was getting, these weird asthma attacks, it was not because I was having more asthma attacks. It was because my blood pressure was too high.
Mm.
And it was uncontrolled. So once I got diagnosed, I got onto medicine. I came in with, so first key, if you're going to your doctor's appointment and you think you have an issue and they tell you to keep a log, keep a log. So I came in there with my log of my blood pressures and they said, oh, wow, thank you so much for this because now I can really see what's going on in your day-to-day life. And they said, yeah, you definitely have high blood pressure. We need to get you onto medicine. And when I did, all of a sudden those headaches stopped. I started feeling better. I didn't feel as kind of worn down because what happens is my body was starting to try and get accustomed to that high blood pressure, but I was having those constant headaches. I was having some shortness of breath when it didn't quite make sense. Um, so all of those things normalized because my blood pressure started to normalize.
Mm.
So sometimes we may have some medical conditions that we're not tending to, that we're not going to the doctor for, that we're not following up on, that we're afraid to lean into because we just don't want to hear the bad news.
Mm-hmm.
When in reality, what we need to do is maybe make some adjustments because, for the record, a lot of those conditions like high blood pressure or diabetes, there are lifestyle changes that you can do that can get you off some medications. So I have 2 children. After my first child, I started having dizziness, which I know is a symptom of low blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
Turns out I lost so much weight that my blood pressure normalized and I had to come off my blood pressure medications. I have another baby. She's 5 months old now. So I'm back on my blood pressure medication.
But that's good. That's a good point that you can make. So we can always control and come off medication. And I've been having some symptoms. Like I've had a migraine headache, like in the front left side, and then sometimes it moves into like the back of my head. And my friends are now saying, "Go check your blood pressure."
Mhm.
And I've never had problems with my blood pressure, but the moment I checked my blood pressure, it was high. Like my normal blood pressure is like 117 over 72.
Mhm.
And so at this time, it was like 130 over 80, 82 or 80 something. And I was like, well, I don't know, maybe because I was running or something. So that is a good point to take. Also, you mentioned that I do want to elaborate on is that you said hereditary.
Mhm.
Let's talk about that. What the importance of knowing family history. Let's talk about that.
So I'll continue to use myself as an example.
Okay.
I have a very strong family history, as most of us do, of high blood pressure and diabetes.
Mhm.
So by that, I mean my grandmother, my aunts, my uncles, and my mother had high blood pressure, and my grandfather. Um, 3 of my aunts and uncles have high blood pressure and diabetes. So that's my family history. That's what I'm working against. So, and I already have high blood pressure. So that means that I'm very vigilant about staying physically active. It means that when I cook, I'm mindful of the seasonings, that I intentionally look for seasonings that are lower in sodium. So for my patients out there, I'm not just telling you stuff, it's because it's actually what I do, that I buy more herbs and spices, that if you look in my cabinet, I have garlic powder, onion powder, I have rosemary, I have thyme, I have cumin, paprika. All of those are spices and herbs that don't have salt in them that can give your food really good flavor. And my husband knows this too, so that when he cooks, you can leave that salt off. You can put it on you can add it at the table. Thank you. Um, and it means that I'm mindful of my weight. It means that I'm fine to indulge in things, but I also keep my goal in mind that, I want to be around for a long time, that I want to be as active as my kids want to be. So, in order to do those things, I don't want to be constantly at doctor's appointments. I don't want to be constantly having to do all of these things at a really young age. So, I'm trying to stay on top of things as best I can.
And it seems like you're doing a great job. I have just been educated so much so that have been making some really poor choices. I have diabetes that run in my family, heart disease, also kidney disease, high blood pressure. And so I just was in the doctor last month and he was like, it's not when, it's not if, it's when. And that was frightening for me. I'm like, I don't want to be like my mom. I don't want to be. My grandmother did not have it, but my dad, my sisters, my brother, and I'm the last one. And so I have to really be cautious. I love seafood. I do have some healthy food choices, but not all. So I know I need to watch what I'm eating. And then I heard you say take all the salt away. So that salt, like I love garlic salt, but use garlic powder. So
Or fresh garlic.
or fresh garlic. And so seasoned salt. All of that stuff we really need to watch.
Yeah, that Lowry's. You gotta put it to the side.
Yeah. Because I look, I am trying to help all of you who've gained weight during this COVID. And so this is the heaviest I ever been in my life. And so I'm right. But I need to cut back. And I was on this seafood kick, but I was adding a lot of butter to my to my because it just tastes better. And so one of my friends, when I walked out the house after COVID, well, kind of when everybody was getting back out, and he just saw me, he looked at me and said, you've been dealing with a lot of Land O'Lakes. And so so Land O'Lakes is dangerous. It is dangerous. It's only for baking cakes and nothing else. And so we're gonna stick to that. But I wanted to ask you, Brittany, how so I mean, you showed us and you talked to us about, pretty much portion control, portion size. You also told us about seasoning, some proper seasoning that we could use to lower that blood pressure. And also, how do we do this on a budget? Because I was told like everything on the outside is healthy and everything inside is not. So everything when you go in the store, so is that a thing that we need to do?
There's some truth to it.
Okay.
But there's levels and layers to that. So it depends on what you're using. First of all, it's summer. We live in Alabama. There's lots of good vegetables. There's farmers markets out there that you can get great in season vegetables for. Squash is what I have so much in my fridge of it in my fridge right now. That's a great vegetable that you can have. But it depends. You can have frozen vegetables that are just as healthy as fresh. It just lasts longer. So, and it might not be what you need. Like if I'm putting squash in the soup, I don't necessarily need fresh squash. I can use frozen squash. And if I'm putting it in the soup, I probably could use canned and I could buy no salt added because you can buy no salt added canned vegetables and I still get the nutrients. A lot of that changes with the quality of the product that you're using that's necessary. So there's no point in me buying fresh tomatoes if I'm making tomato soup, right? I could buy some canned tomatoes. It depends on what I'm using. I'm still getting tomatoes. Right. I'm still getting the things in the tomato. But I think the idea behind that shopping in the grocery store is that you don't want to do the processed foods. A lot of processed foods have a lot of sodium. It's hard to find prepackaged processed foods that aren't very high in sodium. So that's what you want to be mindful of. And you want to be mindful of there's a lot of preservatives and different shelf stable things that prevent them from going bad so quickly. But there are ways around that too. So if you're doing more canned or frozen vegetables, those are lower in cost. You can do some fresh ones, do a combination of the two. That's what I do. I buy some fresh fruits. I buy some canned fruits. because I eat the fresh first and I gradually move down. We got right now, we got strawberries, we got bananas, we got blackberries because they were on sale. We also have applesauce and we've got some mandarin orange cups because as we go through the grocery cycle and we use those fresh, we'll go to our canned. And then I do the same thing with vegetables. I have some veggie fruit cups. They're like fruit cups, but they have vegetables in them, which are perfect for toddler servings. Or if I'm eating something that, like I like my broccoli a little hard, so maybe that might not be for my toddler. So I might give him a veggie cup and I might have some steamed broccoli.
Hmm, that's a good way to look at it. So it's a way to modify and to eat healthy on a good budget is making those right choices, less sodium, when you go and select those things from the can. And I know you mentioned about, beans. You have to watch your bean intake because that's the starch. Because I know I like to just pop open a can of maybe beanie weenies or something like that. I mean, it's just quick. And so, but that's not healthy. And then those ramen noodles. My daughter, for some reason, she loves those noodles, and I only like them when she's eating them. I only like them when she's eating them. And then I have a blasting headache. What is it in those ramen noodles that's causing me to have a headache?
It is the sodium. One packet of ramen noodles probably has more than a day's worth of sodium on a low sodium diet. We recommend 2,000 milligrams of sodium a day, and I bet you it's probably about 2,000 milligrams or a little bit
And
more.
that's why it's cheap. That's why it's affordable. That's why.
That's why it's affordable because that's the only thing it's got going for it. That's the
Okay,
only thing.
so y'all listen to me. Stay away from those Roman noodles because it has a lot of sodium in it. And so now I know because I love them when I'm eating it off of her plate. And then I'm like, I have a headache. So I'm so glad. Let me ask you, Brittany. Listen, you all have been listening to Yolanda Kelly, and I am here in the studio tonight with Brittany Harris. Shay is off tonight, and so you'll be listening to us for a few more minutes. Thank you so much for joining. Are you getting all this information down? We want you to be the best healthy you can be. And after this, we're kind of not normal yet, but we're almost to normal. And because we're almost to normal, I see more people out at restaurants and eating. And you cannot go to Texas Roadhouse because it's always packed. And so I tried it and I've stayed. One night I was in line for 2 hours. But listen, we want you to be educated and make healthy, wise eating choices. And I know that we've been in our homes and we've been eating like somebody crazy, ice cream and steak and fried food. So those things, you can do that in moderation. It's what Brittany just suggested to us, but we need to cut down our food portion. I want to ask you, Brittany, how can we find a dietitian? Because remember, now growing up, I'll never remember mama them,
Yeah.
mama them
Mm-hmm.
saying a dietitian. Or my doctor said I just need to lose some weight, or my doctor said I need to cut
Mm-hmm.
this out.
Yeah.
So how do we find, for those who's looking for a dietitian to train them, because usually your job is based on training us to show us how to make better eating choices. Tell me, how can we find a dietitian? How can we find you?
So I hope that you guys don't get to me because I am a dietitian at a dialysis clinic.
Okay.
That's my day job. So that's how you would get to me. But anytime you go to the hospital, there's a dietitian there. If you have diabetes, you would go to your primary care physician or the doctor that's managing your diabetes and tell them you want to be referred for diabetes education. And what they'll probably do is refer you to there's a diabetes education center at Jackson Hospital and at Baptist Hospital here in Montgomery, and there are dietitians there. So a lot of medical conditions will allow a referral for a diabetes for a dietitian for education. If you have diabetes, that is one of them, and it's not just one time. I think you can do that every year, and your insurance covers it. So that's a great access. And always talk to your primary care physician. Tell them, hey, I want to talk to a dietitian about healthy eating. I want to talk to them about weight loss. I want to talk to them about diabetes management or a low fat diet. And if they give you some education materials, they say, here, this brochure is good, insist, no, I really want to talk to a dietitian. And they can send a referral. I know some dietitians that are doing private practice here in Montgomery that take insurance. So But the first thing that you need to do is get a referral from your primary care physician in most instances, unless you go to a center like a dialysis clinic that has a dietitian on staff.
Let me ask you something. You mentioned dialysis. Have you had any person that come across to not have to be dialyzed? Did I say that correctly?
You did.
Okay.
So by the time patients get to me, it's important to know that the primary two causes of end-stage renal disease, which is kidney failure,
Right.
that we're treating at the dialysis clinic, is uncontrolled high blood pressure and uncontrolled diabetes. So those are the diagnoses that normally go uncontrolled for a while, and that causes damage to those blood vessels in the kidney over time. And eventually they go through chronic kidney disease stages 1 through 4, and they end up with end stage renal failure. And that's when they end up at dialysis. So that's what chronic means. There's also acute, which means that there's some trauma to the kidneys. So let's say I got into a car accident, I got some trauma to my kidneys, and they stopped working. That can happen sometimes. And what normally happens is the kidneys need a little time to rest and recover, and they come around. Um, so that happens sometimes. We've had some patients who they thought might have permanent kidney failure. They come to the outpatient clinic and their kidney function does rebound. So it does occur. What I normally tell my patients, unless you're specifically told that by your doctor, it's possible. Anything's possible. It's just not probable. If you are there because of uncontrolled diabetes or high blood pressure, we do not typically see people come off dialysis and no longer require dialysis with those two diagnoses because the damage to the blood vessels in the kidneys have happened over time and it's not reversible. But if this is you, there are other options. There are different types of dialysis. There's kidney transplant. There are other things that can kind of change the things about your life. And there's also quality of life on dialysis. But before you get to me, the key is keep your doctor's appointments, follow up on those conditions, take your medications, and be an advocate for yourself. Don't just go to the doctor and believe they're God. Know what your health condition is, educate yourself, and ask questions. Be a part of your care team because as medical professionals, all of us, it is our job to promote autonomy. That means it's our job to make sure that you are well informed and that you can make good decisions about your own healthcare.
That's a good note. I like that, Brittany. Brittany, you have really provided us information that we need. And I like it when you said you have to be the best advocate for yourself. There has been times, even with myself, that I've gone to the doctor and I've been misdiagnosed. And it's because I ask questions. And so my friends always like it when I'm talking and asking questions because they say I'm being nosy. But it's not that. I'm asking questions because I need to know the answer. And so like I said, I was in last month and I said, what are these numbers? So the doctor, what you do is they send you for a blood test and take the blood for your labs. They call it labs. They send you in for your labs and then they give you all these numbers with some acronyms near it. And so you don't know what the acronyms are. AC1, you don't know what that means. Or give me some acronyms, Brittany.
Oh, K for potassium.
PO, is it POT?
POT, a lot of time you may see just a letter K.
Oh, okay, K. So you don't know what those letters mean. So I stopped my doctor because that's why I pay him. And I said, wait a minute, I need you to go and tell me what this means and what this means. And he stopped. He said, okay. And I kept asking about my A1C. And he said to his nurse, make sure you send that to her so she keeps asking. I think a lot of times we nod our head and we say yes when we don't even know what they're talking about. No longer should you do that. No longer should nod your head and act like you understand. You make sure when you leave, say, doctor, what is this? What does this mean? What the number should be? Because what they do, they give you this piece of paper from the lab and expect you to know it. Now, some of us, like me, will go home and Google it. Or you could be like me and just straight out ask the doctor, what does this mean? I don't know. I went to school for technology, not to be a doctor. And so they will stop what they're doing and take their time and explain what does this high and low, because they have numbers next, they have high and low next to that lab form. Ask, and it's a greater than sign if it's greater than 100. And so if it's high, that means that it's too high. And if it's low, he also broke down my good fat, which is my good fat and my bad fat. And so, but everyone is not like that. I need you to stop saying, yes, you understand, and ask. And I also need you to make sure you check your prescription. If you're going to several different doctors, you always, Brittany, I want you to elaborate on that since I know I touched the subject. You always should compare your medicine. So if you have a primary doctor, that primary doctor needs to know what you're taking from your obstetrician. They need to know what you're taking from your eye doctor, your foot doctor. They need to know what type of medicine you're taking. We want to educate you. My grandmother was taking the same medicine and she did not know. Until the moment I was her caretaker, well, providing, taking her pills out and not so much her caretaker, but I helped grandma and I noticed that she was taking the same medicine twice. Let's talk about it, Brittany. Tell the audience about really being cautious about prescription medicine.
So there are multiple medications to treat multiple things, right? So if you have high blood pressure, there are a variety of high blood pressure medications. So given my example, let's say my OB prescribed me a particular blood pressure medicine when I was pregnant, and she was my primary caregiver at that point because I was pregnant. I wasn't seeing my primary care physician regularly because she was deferring to my OB. Well, if I didn't, now that I'm not pregnant anymore, I'm not seeing my OB. When I go see my primary care, if I forget to tell her that I'm taking this medication and I come in and let's say that day, for whatever reason, my blood pressure is still a little bit high. Let's say the dose that I'm on isn't quite covering it, but I forget to tell her that I'm already taking something. So she may assume that I'm not on blood pressure medicine at all and give me something that's not appropriate and then I can have a low blood pressure. Or in my situation, I'm still breastfeeding. She may not know I'm breastfeeding. If I don't tell her that, she could prescribe me something that could be harmful to my baby or to my breastfeeding journey. So the important thing, communication between you and your doctor and multiple doctors is very important to make sure that you're taking the right amount of medicine to keep you safe and to control your conditions, and that you're doing a plan that's appropriate for you because it is indeed your plan together. So a lot of the times, what I'll end up saying at the end of appointments is, "So what's our plan? What are we doing? So going forward, I know you may want me to take this, but I'm not really feeling comfortable taking that, but I'm willing to do this because." And they can tell me the pros and cons of that decision, and I can make an informed choice because ultimately, at the end of the day, it is my choice.
Brittany, how can we educate our people about dialysis? So you say when hopefully they don't have to come to you. Let's pretend we got off kilter, off track with our blood pressure medicine. We couldn't afford it because a lot of cases, blood pressure medicine can be very expensive if you don't have insurance. And if you have a certain brand of insurance, it still may be expensive. And so I hear a lot of stories about medicine is very high. So we didn't take our blood pressure medicine like we should, and now we are on dialysis. I know that there are several types. I know, go into and explain to us because it's a sensitive subject for me. My mom passed away some 21 years ago. July 1st will be 21 years from renal failure. And she was very young. And so let's talk about, I remember her first being at home and then she had to go into the dialysis center. So let's talk about the steps. There's several types. One you can do at home. Let's talk about that one.
Okay, so home dialysis, there are two types. There's home hemodialysis, and for that, you use a hemodialysis machine that's a lot smaller than the one that we use in center, but it still means that we get access to your blood to clean the blood. So that means most people have a vascular access is what we use to get access to your blood with in their arms. and they either have a partner or themselves, they cannulate themselves or they stick themselves to get access to the blood and get hooked up to the dialysis machine. So they can do that at home or they could do that in an outpatient dialysis clinic like the one I work at. Another type of home dialysis is called peritoneal dialysis or PD. So peritoneal dialysis doesn't use a hemodialysis machine that has a filter on it that helps to clean your blood. It uses the lining of your stomach, your peritoneum, to filter the toxins in and out. And that's probably what she did. That's more common. I tend to think it's more common in the settings that I've worked with. So the options that we have so far are home hemodialysis, in-center hemodialysis, peritoneal dialysis, and then, of course, another option is kidney transplant. Or, of course, that's what a lot of patients want, which is a viable option. It takes time to get on the wait list, but it does happen. I've seen many patients get kidney transplants.
What, how can one get on the kidney transplant? Because I've heard so many stories, like I'm waiting on God to put me on this kidney. What are some key components or key steps in order for a patient to be placed on kidney? Because I, I, I just know some people that needs a kidney transplant, but he's still smoking. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I was like, would they give you a kidney if you're still out here smoking? I just need to know what are some things that you have to, what's the qualification is the key word.
So that's not necessarily my area of expertise.
Okay.
The person who knows most about that is typically the dialysis social worker. So if you're on dialysis, you have a care team. You have a nephrologist or a kidney doctor. You have your nurse or nurses. You have your patient care techs. You have your dietitian, and you have your social worker. So the dialysis social worker is the one who typically fields those kidney transplant referrals. So the first step is to ask your nephrologist or your kidney doctor to refer you for a kidney transplant. And from there, they'll typically refer you to either locally, it's UAB, or to Piedmont in Atlanta. And from there, you'll get contact from the social worker. The people behind the scenes will send all your paperwork to them. And then you'll get contacted from the transplant center for evaluation. And they will do a series of tests. They'll require blood work, heart things, to see basically assessing you out to see if you have any other conditions. Like we don't want you to have cancer somewhere that we didn't know about, and we give you a brand new kidney that could have gone to someone else who could have used it longer, or that something be underlying that could damage this. So that's what typically happens there. And to your point, there are some reasons why the transplant committee may decide not to list you. Like for one that I work with patients a lot is obesity. If you're over a certain body mass index or BMI, they may not list you. They may waitlist you. They may say, "Hey, this is what you need to do to become active on our list. You have to lose this much weight." Or they may say, and I'm not sure for sure about this one, they may say, yeah, you are smoking, and we're concerned about that. So we may want to see these steps before we're willing to put you on our list.
So how, so I know how long usually is the list, do you know, or how, have you seen a lot of patients to come in and have received the kidney transplant?
I have seen a lot. I think that wait that they say most of the time is 3 to 5 years. That may be conservative, but I believe I've heard our social workers say that. So what we normally tell patients is if you think that you're remotely interested, tell your doctor, get referred so that we can start the process of getting you on the list because it can take a while. Um, it's different for children. They get special points on the transplant list, but it does take a little while. But I mean, I've had patients who've been on dialysis almost 10 years, so I've seen a variety of different people get
So,
kidney transplants.
so that means that you can potentially live a long life with dialysis, being on
Oh
dialysis? Because I
yes.
had this false, I guess, because of what happened to me, that people on dialysis don't live very long. So help me with that false narrative because I need to get over this because I'm thinking, well, she didn't do something right, or it was the dialysis that did it. Because I was very young. I don't say very young, but I was young, and I didn't quite understand like I understand now. So help me understand a person on dialysis. What is a healthy life for them to be? Can I use that word? Because you can still have a healthy life and yet be on dialysis. And so that was this false narrative that I had played in my head. Can you clear that up for me?
Yes. So there are definitely things to do to live longer on dialysis. There are some things that are outside of our control, but just like with diabetes or high blood pressure, there are things that we can do. If you're on dialysis, making sure that you're going to your appointments and doing your dialysis treatments, staying your prescribed time, taking your medications consistently, um, following the guidelines that they're telling you, specifically like right now with the pandemic. Our patients are at higher risk. So we're educating them. And during this time, we were educating them on the importance of staying home, being mindful of who you're around, who they come in contact with, limiting their exposure because their immune system was compromised. But also, they're having a dietitian there. They're getting labs run regularly. So being mindful of what they're eating, what education are you getting from your dietitian there about what you should eat? What are they educating you about your medications? And keeping all of those things in mind. That the biggest thing is don't bury your head in the sand. Listen to your healthcare professionals and follow their guidance and come up with a plan that works for you.
So do you usually make out the plans when your patients come in, or are you just the one to set up the machine and dialyze, help them with that process?
No, so I do the education.
Okay.
So when our patients come in, I do make recommendations on medications that might be appropriate for them based off some of their labs. So that's what's typically done behind the scenes with me coordinating with the doctor or the nurses. But what the patients see is that I come out, I give them a paper that has their labs on them. I say, these are your nutrition related labs. I go over each lab with them and I tell them what they need to do dietary wise to improve it. And then if there's something that's connected to it, I may talk about that. Like, hey, I see that your potassium is a little bit high here, but it's normally fine. But I also remember that you weren't here the other day. Have you been missing dialysis treatments? Yeah, I had something going on. Okay, well, your dialysis days are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. It's really important that you come because of this, this, and this. So
let's talk about that for a second. How important are those dialysis scheduled appointments? Because I also know that sometimes we struggle with transportation, we struggle with medicine, maybe what we did the week before, because we have a guilty conscience. And so, with that, we don't want to come in dialysis. So, tell me if I'm on something with that guilty conscience. Am I on something with that?
Sometimes patients will want to do what they want to do, and they know we're going to be able to tell.
Exactly.
So they may miss that treatment, which is the opposite. That's the opposite of what you want to do. If you know you're about to go out and do something that you don't need to do, please give us a heads up because we want to keep you safe. We want to help you so that we know, hey, well, maybe we want to draw this extra lab on you. Or maybe we want to give you an extra few minutes on the machine so that we want to make sure you go off at your dry weight, that you don't have any extra fluid on you. That we want to make sure you're as healthy as possible.
Last words, Brittany. Listen, you have been listening to Yolanda Kelly on Hearts and Heels with Brittany Harris. She is our specialist. She's a dietitian, and she's talking to us about healthy living. And so she is on point with a lot of things. I have a lot of family members who have experienced some of these things, so I have a little knowledge about it, but not a lot. And so she has brought a whole lot of knowledge on me tonight that I got to do better with my eating choices. And I hope you do too. So, Brittany, last thoughts. Tell us how some steps to stay safe as a dialysis patient. This is give us some last thoughts and whatever else you would like to share.
Last thoughts for dialysis patients. It's the summer. Be mindful of your fluid. Be mindful that it's hot. Don't drink too much.
She's not talking about water, I don't think, right?
Oh, I am. For dialysis patients, the amount of liquids that you drink is restricted. So, if you go out into the heat and you get too hot and you drink a lot of fluid, you can come in with too much fluid on you that can accumulate.
Got it.
So, yes, for dialysis patients, that's important, which is very different for a lot of people.
Right.
It's the summer, so fruits and vegetables are out. And one of the things a lot of dialysis patients have to watch is their potassium intake, which a lot of fruits and vegetables are high in potassium. So be careful of those high potassium foods. I'm sure your dietitian would be happy to give you a list, and they are probably giving you some education materials to help you to survive the summer well. And enjoy.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you, Brittany, so much. This is Brittany Harris, the dietitian. She is not just a dietitian; she is registered
A registered dietitian.
registered dietitian. That means she had to do her work, and so as you can hear, that she knows her stuff as well. And I thank you so much for being a part of Hearts and Heals. Hey, listen, you have been listening to Yolanda Kelly with Hearts and Heals on WVAS. We like to say thank you for joining. And remember, whatever you do, do it with all your heart. And if you can't do it with your heart, put your heel on it. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right, Brittany, you are so smart.